All right. So we got a lot to talk about. All right. And for any companies, any developers, anybody who ends up watching this video, I'm going to point a couple of things out that will be quite interesting. And I ended up being right on every single one of these points. Some people in my community are starting to say I can predict the future. And the reason for that is because I called the fall of Mixer in 2019. December of 2019, I've realized that Mixer was going to fall flat. It was going to die. The platform was going to get shut down. And I told as many of my friends as I could about it. I was like, hey, listen, I'd start putting your eggs into a different basket. Mixer's going down. They're like, no, 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 you're just being too negative. You're being too negative. I'm like, no, Mixer is going to shut down. And again, this was December of 2019. Mixer shut down 6 months later. What was it, June or July of 2020? Mixer shut down. And I tried to tell everybody, I tried to help the platform, right? I gave the platform ideas to help stimulate growth and stimulate a sustainable and achievable happy medium that they were looking for. And they didn't listen. So for Mixer, whenever everything was going on and there were a whole bunch of different things that were coming out, right? The Microsoft lady called all of the partners her slaves. There was a leaked meeting that happened where the Microsoft employees pretty much said, listen, if you don't want to be part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. And some other verbiage that was used that to me was like a red flag whenever it came out. And I was like, hey, this is the sign that the platform is dying. And throughout my partnership with Mixer, which I got partnered, I believe, in 2018. It's hard for me to remember now. It's almost 4 years ago for that. But I got partnered 2018. I think July 4th, 2018 is when I was partnered. I was partnered within a year on the platform. And that's a pretty big milestone. Um, and throughout my year on the platform, I had created and helped to push multiple different events and communities that really could have taken the platform by storm. The most notable one was I created something called Indie Day, and it was like once a month or once every other week on like Sunday. We got a whole bunch of people who loved indie games to all stream that exact game so that it could move further up in the rankings of Mixer's most watched so that that game could get recognition. And it started to catch on so much that it got to the point that some people were like, hey, you know what? This is a really good idea. And it helped to spark a lot of conversation. I had my partner manager helping with it, and I was able to get a lot of people front page whenever we were doing Indie Day. Like everything. It was a big thing, and it was doing a lot of good for the platform. Discoverability was up for people who don't play like Fortnite or PUBG. It was great, and I gave more options that were like that to Microsoft, I guess you could say, because Mixer was like, yeah, we'll do that if we're allowed. But Microsoft was like, nah, fam, we ain't going to do that. And then July 2020, the platform falls. Now, in 2020, I was given this opportunity by a company called Bless Unleashed. And a lot of people will know me from that game. Um, at one point, my videos were so popular on YouTube and my streams were so popular on Twitch that people in the game called me the face of Bless Unleashed. And it actually annoyed me because I didn't want to be the face of a game. I never wanted to be the go-to person for information or for people to watch play a game, especially a big MMO like that. And I rode the high for a little bit, but eventually I was like, listen, devs, there's a big problem with your game. Couple big problems. Number one, they had a grind that took, I think, about a month to get through after you beat the first part of the story, after you beat Gideon. And they put that grind there to give themselves more time to put more content out after Gideon. But the problem is, they never took it away because people were starting to get through that grind. And then instead of just saying, oh, hey, you did good, here's a couple extra things for getting through the grind, they ended up just keeping the grind. And it really alienated the people who aren't able to be on the game every single day. Because what you had to do was you had to do all of your dailies, but the dailies rotated in like 4 hour increments, 4 or 6 hour increments, and it wasn't guaranteed that you would get all your dailies in a day unless you were on 24/7. And then you had the same problem with some weeklies as well. And it's like, well, why would anybody put in that kind of time if they're just an average player to get through a grind that doesn't have very much afterwards, which was a big issue. After their initial story, after their initial part of the game where you beat Gideon, the entire story just fell apart. They had nothing. It was like the writers of the story just fell apart. And I said, listen, you need to up the game. Like, the first part was great, a lot of people were playing it. A lot of people were excited about it. But after the fact, they focused on the wrong thing. They focused on end game dungeons. But the problem is the general player base couldn't even get to those end game dungeons. Why? Because of the thing that I was the most vocal about throughout the entirety of the game, from beta test all the way until I stopped playing the game. The way that you are able to fight stronger things and do better things is by getting a higher gear score. And that gear score is determined by how many times you can upgrade some gear. The problem is if you're upgrading gear, there's a chance that you'll fail. If you fail, it has a chance to break it. And then they're like, okay, we'll put in a dude in a PvP area that has a higher chance of success, but if he breaks it, the gear's destroyed. And so people started trying to do that, and they lost their gear. And whenever I say it took forever to grind out gear score, I mean from like, I don't even remember what the normal gear scores were, but like for like a 300 to 400 gear score, with 700 being the highest, we'll say, for 300 to 400, it would take you almost 2 full weeks of grinding just to get to 350. And every single time they tried to address it, every single time they tried to adjust it, instead of just saying, hey, this sucked, here, people who did this have a little extra. People who couldn't do this, it's easier now. They ended up just trying to do these different adjustments that never worked. The way that they had the whole progression system was completely flawed. And I told them this. I told them this multiple times. I said, you're going to lose your player base and your game is going to shut down unless you fix it. And they did not listen. And sure enough, whenever I stopped playing the game, the player base was cut by like 3/4, probably. Only the die-hard players were playing the game. But again, the content that they were bringing out was late game dungeons and some really half-assed story. It wasn't really content that was engaging enough to make people want to be able to play the game some more. And So they were getting no new players because there was such a hard wall for a general player to pass, and then their old players were leaving the game because the content was so dry. And I returned to the game. I said, "Hey, I'm going to check it out. Let's see if the developers finally did something to help make the game feel better again." And this was a year after I had stopped playing the game. So the game had been out for like a year, year and a half, and they still hadn't changed anything. And by that time, at at the beginning, to give you guys an idea, at the beginning, the NA server that I was on went from needing 3 different server worlds so that there wasn't a lot of lag to like 6 in the span of a month. And then after I left, it went back down to 3. And then when I went back, they only had 2. So their player base was dwindling. And I told them, I was like, listen, this is your problem. Fix this and people will come. And they didn't listen. And I mean, the rest is pretty much history, right? Freaking Bandai Namco Entertainment of America, they backed away from the game. Like they didn't make a formal thing about it or anything. They just straight up said, "Nah, we're not gonna help to push this game anymore." And that was evident by what was it? I think it was the Steam and PlayStation release, or maybe just the Steam. The Steam release was purely by the devs, no publishing or publisher access from Bandai Namco. And that is the big tell that as a dev team, you fucked up. If your publisher is like, nah, fam, we ain't gonna do this now, that means you did something wrong and you gotta check yourself. But they didn't. They kept it status quo, what they thought was working. And guess what? I'm pretty sure it's like November 4th or something like that. It's closing all of its servers. Bless Unleashed will be a complete dead game. There will be 0 player base for Bless Unleashed. You'll not be able to download the game. You'll not be able to do anything with Bless Unleashed. Now, MMOs that were like Bless Unleashed have had a rough go at it because it's a mixture of like World of Warcraft and Lord of the Rings Online, and it's not really bringing a lot of new stuff to the table. But if you look at the MMOs that were like Bless Unleashed and the time that they've been open, Terra, if you guys haven't heard of Terra, played a lot of it. Well, maybe not a lot of it, but a good chunk of it. Probably a good like 10, 15 hours at least, right? Played through the whole game, hung out with people on it, played with people in the community, all that. And it was a lot of fun for a while. But then it started to get bland. It started to feel like every other game again. I was like, okay, well, I'm done with it. And Terra was open for like 5, 6 years, something like that. I don't know. Someone fact check me on it. I'm not going to pull it up right now because I'll probably get distracted. But it was open for a pretty good chunk of time, right? And then the other one, if we're not counting Lord of the Rings Online, Lotro, Lord of the Rings Online is still going to this day, and it came out, I think, over a decade ago, and it's still crazy popular. I mean, granted, yeah, it's Lord of the Rings. A lot of people are gonna be like, oh, it's only open because it's Lord of the Rings and blah blah blah. But I mean, hey, listen, if a game is decent, then people will stay playing. Because even if it was bad, people would just be like, oh, that's a horrible Lord of the Rings game. We'll just play something else. It's very simple. It's very common sense. Look at World of Warcraft. Bless Unleashed was almost a how could you call it, like a third person World of Warcraft, but simplified. World of Warcraft, you got like a whole bunch of different abilities that you can put on different classes, different races, stuff like that. In Bless Unleashed, you had different classes, different races, but you had different like um, subclasses that you could go with. So, and it would give you different moves depending on the subclass. Like they couldn't make it so you had 1 through 0 for attack abilities or different abilities or anything because it was all controller. So it was a simplified version of it. But World of Warcraft has been active for over 2 decades. Old school RuneScape has been active for over 2 decades. Neverwinter, which Neverwinter was the first, as far as I know, first MMO that actually came out that kept going after Lotro, Lord of the Rings Online. And to this day, Neverwinter is still active. It's not the most popular game in the world, but it has enough people playing it that it's worth keeping the servers open. Then we have Bless Unleashed. It was open for what, 2 years? 2.5 years? That's not very long in the span of time for uh, an MMORPG. Because we got Terra, which was like 5, 6 years. Neverwinter, which is like 8 years old. Lord of the Rings Online, which is like 10, 15 years old. World of Warcraft, which is like 21 years old or 20 years old. And RuneScape, which is 21 years old. Which, yes, if you guys didn't know, RuneScape is actually older than World of Warcraft. Um, but yeah, it was the biggest fail at MMORPGs. And I gave them the ideas, I gave them the ability to make it into something that it might not have been the next World of Warcraft or old school RuneScape, but it would have at least kept going far after its current end date. And now, if you got to this part in the video, thanks. You've been listening to me talk about why some stuff have broken and why it failed. The reason I'm saying all of this is because, one, if you guys didn't know, I'm actually trying to create my own game. It's going to be a very simple, very non-complicated game. It's going to probably be an idle clicker. It'll be something small, right? And I'm going to be implementing the ideas that I think would work for a game. Being someone who's been gaming since he was 6 years old, maybe even 5 years old, someone who's been gaming literally all of his life. I'm going to take that experience, take that knowledge, and put it into put my money where my mouth is, essentially, and make a game for myself. Um, and I'm doing a little bit of the game dev on stream here and there. It's not all the time. It's like maybe once or twice a week, nothing crazy. But as far as companies go and people who want to start projects and people who want to do stuff, listen, I may seem dumb at times, but I can make shit work. You just gotta make sure that it gets implemented, right? I created the Raids of Love movement. It is now huge. We've worked with, I think, almost 50 different creators now, and most of them keep coming back. Some of them have hundreds of thousands of followers. We're probably this month going to be taking Raids of Love over onto YouTube as well. It is a huge movement that I started a year ago, right? And it's just growing. It's not slowing down. We've raised almost $20,000. Probably closer to 15, but almost $20,000 for charity. And it's all because I had an idea. I've always said that if people would give me a chance to do and create the things that I want to create, that they could be $1 million ideas. Hell, the solo project that I want to do, if I can pull it off, if I can get the funding for it, how I'm imagining it in my head, it could be a 30 to 45 minute like video that eventually turns into a movie or TV show because of the production level of the content that I want to do. It is huge. And that's the thing. I I have that drive to make creative and fun and awesome things like that, right? The companies seem to have lost that drive. And so, for the whole point of this video, I'm going to offer my assistance to developers, to people who want to start crazy ideas, to anybody who wants to do something a little bit outside the box. If you want help, I can help. You just have to listen. There's some things that I don't know, but that I end up figuring out. And then whenever I figure it out, it works. And everybody's like, oh, great, it works. You know? So, yeah, that's why Mixer and Bless Unleashed died. That's why people say that I can predict the future almost. And yeah, that's why I'm putting my money where my mouth is and doing what I can to open up the capabilities to succeed where others have failed. So I'm gonna stop chatting your guys' ears off. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below if you know of anybody, anything, anyone who once needs help or would like to try to put their money where their mouth is. We'll make it happen. And go out, do something nice for somebody today. And I will see all of you guys next time. Bye, guys!